All right. Hello, Bill.
Hello, John. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I
Excellent.
am, as we begin I think this is the fifth Pulse Live.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I believe so.
So that's pretty amazing. The previous four recordings are now available on YouTube. And I'm recognizing that I don't really have the time to edit all of these episodes very much. So
I hear you.
like next
I
time we
hear
get in an episode, I'm not going to ramble too much in the beginning. We're going to get right to it
you. I hear you.
because I don't have time to edit all these episodes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I guess toward that end, um, there's a couple of things I want to point out so that when we get this video posted, we will have this included. I'm going to share my screen briefly.
Sounds good.
First of all, I'm going to apologize. I've got a cough that sneaks up on me right in the middle of sentences in the most awkward ways. So I apologize in advance for that. Get this cleared out of the way. So March is Nursing Education Month here at Acadicus. I don't think it's Nursing Education Month anywhere else in the world, but we just decided to make it Nursing Education Month, and we think nursing educators should be celebrated more than they are. They're certainly becoming increasingly scarce and increasingly important. So, obviously, our one of our main objectives with Acadicus is to provide tools to nursing educators to help make their jobs easier and to provide clinical experiences to their students. Measurably effective clinical experiences is what we're trying to do here. Toward that end, the month of March is going to have a bunch of really fun events. March 15th, which is next Friday at noon Central, we're going to have Mitch Luker from Northeast Wisconsin Technical College and Jamie Howell from Western Technical College, are going to join us and do an encore of their IMSH presentation that they gave this January when we were out in San Diego. Trying not to get flooded out of the convention hall. But they gave a great presentation, and I've asked if they would give an encore of that presentation during Simulation Pulse Live, and they both agreed. So, very excited to have them coming on Friday, March 15th, noon Central. Next, we're going to have a watch party for a new mini documentary that we created about OpenRN. And if you're not already familiar with OpenRN, it's a great resource. It's an initiative funded by the Department of Education to create open education resources for nursing educators. So there's textbooks, there's virtual scenarios, there's virtual applications that you can try out. And Acadicus has content set up to enable you to run really high fidelity virtual simulations that are in alignment with those open education resources. So really excited about that OpenRN project. We're kind of doing a bit of a final victory lap on that project because we just finished it up. There's a ton of content in Acadicus to support these simulations. And what we wanted to do is put a spotlight on the overall initiative. So Kim Ernstmeyer was the lead administrator of that grant and did an amazing job of bringing lots of people together and organizing a committee of people to make sure that the textbooks were really carefully crafted to align with the greatest needs and have the most up-to-date information. And so I really wanted to have an opportunity to shine a spotlight on Kim Ernstmeyer and the amazing job that she did administering that grant. But also a couple of schools that were working with the resources with OpenRN. Of course, we had a feature video on Madison College, which is making use of the OpenRN resources, but also Northeast Wisconsin Technical College, which you see in this image here. Mitch Luker, who's going to be giving that presentation, was kind enough to allow us into their new XR Center up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So we packed up early, bright and early, about 5:30 in the morning one day, and we went up there with a camera crew of incredible professionals at Brave Bird, and they did a great job of capturing some of the actual live simulation with the nursing students, but also some interviews with simulation experts and educators, administrators talking about their experience. Mainly, we're focusing on the fact that there's a shortage of nurses, and that shortage is projected to get a lot worse. And how can we provide resources to help mitigate those shortages? So that's really kind of the main topic of the mini documentary. And then after that, we're going to have a panel discussion. So we're going to have several people joining us. Mitch and Jamie, of course, will be there. They were in the video. I'm going to see if I can get Kim. The grant is over. I'm going to see if I can get Kim to join us. And of course, Bill Ballo, Rick Casteel, myself. I've invited several other people to join as well. So it'll be a great panel discussion to talk about the shortage of clinicians and the use of virtual reality to help address that. Finally, we're going to learn more about how Madison College is using VR simulation in their amazing new XR Center to help with nursing. So we'll be focusing on their application of VR, about Acadicus, the OpenRN resources, and their use of nursing simulation.
Yeah, I'm going to see if Melissa Surway can join that day. I haven't checked with her yet, so I need to check with her, I guess, before I go name dropping. But hopefully, Melissa will be able to join and she can speak to some of the usage for nursing. You know, obviously, I'm not a nurse myself, but I work very closely with the nursing program to help them with their virtual reality initiatives. So. And it's really great to watch. And we've been using some of the OpenRN stuff as well. And it's been great.
Outstanding. That's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully Melissa's available. That would be amazing. I'm going to share a link here to these events in case you want to see that. I'm also going to share a link to another page here that's focused specifically on nursing, since it is Nursing Educators Month here at Acadicus. I'm going to get this out of the way. This page has all the resources that you'll need. We're going to be doing a watch party for this video, but if you want to see the video ahead of time, you can watch it at acadicus.com/nursing. Right up at the top is the video. We've got an Acadicus guide you can download. You can schedule a demo. You can learn all about the good stuff. You can watch the spotlight video that we did for Madison College and their new XR Center. Learn more about how University of Wisconsin School of Medicine, the McAdams Research Group, is doing amazing, incredible, and innovative things, bridging significant geographic distance between Madison and Vietnam and running neonatal simulations there. So you can see that in that video. So that's less about nursing, but it's a great video anyway. So that's that video. And then finally, I want to share a link. A lot of people ask about where we're at and how they can follow the progress of this community. And this link tree has a link to all of our different social channels, so you can see where we're at on these different social media channels. All right, so that's my spiel. I didn't mean to take over with a bunch of salesy stuff, but I want to get the information out there. We've got a lot of cool events coming up in March, so I wanted to share that.
That's perfect, John. And welcome to Martin. Sean has also joined here as well. Welcome to
What's up,
both of you.
Sean?
If
Sean and
you
Martin.
have any questions that you'd like to put in the Q&A, please obviously feel free to do so. I will monitor the Q&A in the chat. I'm sure John will as well. And we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have or anything like that. So
I gotta ask, is this Martin from the UK? I've known Martin, if it is, I've known this Martin for a very long time.
I can,
Another,
you know what, since we're small today, I can, let me just click allow to talk here, Martin.
sure, add Sean in too.
Yeah, we might as well
Come on
go
in.
$4 on this one, right?
Martin's probably like, I don't want to talk. This is a webinar. I just want to sit back and chill out and eat my lunch. Or well, if it is the Martin I think it is, he's in the UK. It's probably evening. But
Hey,
either
John,
way,
Bill.
hi Sean. Welcome. Happy Friday.
Yes, thank you guys.
Let's see. Well, we can do anything we want with our time here during Pulse Live. Um, a lot of the activities are happening later this month. I didn't really set anything up specific in terms of an event for the first week here, but we can go into the menu, we can load up a catechus, we can look at some of the nursing content that's in there, we can do whatever we want. So Martin, if you have any special requests, let me know. Let us know, and we'll go for it. Any new content you want to see? What I want, well, you know what? Why don't we take a look at the birthing simulator? It's a little tricky to demonstrate that one because of the fact that the minute that we show it actually running, then YouTube is going to not allow us to put this video on YouTube. But we can like refer to it and we can, just at least talk about what's all in that scenario. Because I was going to have one of our events focus specifically on the birthing simulator, but with the other events that we have going this month, we didn't get time to do it. So maybe we could do that today. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And if we have some time at the end, John, I can also talk a little bit about the two newest scenarios that have come out for our nursing department.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Let's lead with that. Why don't you go with
Okay,
that? Yeah, let's go for
sounds
that.
good. Look at that. I get the lead.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so we just two scenarios just finished up. Just a couple of small things that we wanted to tweak, and I previewed those with our nursing faculty. So one is a patient comes back from surgery and they're given blood and they have an infusion reaction. And so there's a sequencer actually for it. So the infusion reaction sequencer takes them through all of the potential stages, along with what if the student does the right thing, what if the student doesn't do the right thing? Like, do they treat, do they not treat? And if they don't, then the vital signs go one way. If they do, the vital signs go a different way. And if they recognize that this person is having an infusion reaction. So that scenario just finished up. That was it's out of development, and we had a couple of things that we needed added in. Peter just got back to me the other day about a couple of things that had been done, and so that should be ready to be used. I'm gonna say I don't think we have any clinicals in summer. If we did, it would be available to use with summer. So that's probably going to happen then in fall, that they'll be implementing that, using that in fall. And another one that really hits close to home, because being in police, fire, and EMS, we unfortunately have a lot of people who harm themselves. I won't go any further than that because we do want this to go up on YouTube. But this one is an opiate reaction, not an opiate overdose, but an opiate reaction. But it makes me think of what an opiate overdose would be like. And it even goes through some of the treatment regarding that opiate overdose. So basically, this patient has an opiate reaction, a little too much in terms of the way that it acts with their body, and they start to have that respiratory depression, those kind of things. And that's also in the sequencer. So that opiate reaction is in the sequencer, does the same thing, right? So opiate is given, blood pressure drops, respiratory rate, those kind of things, and then the way that the patient reacts to it. So I'll have Melissa speak more to those when we are up on the 29th, because she knows more of the clinical stuff behind it. But the thing that I'm thinking about in terms of this is, and this is why I like what you can do with Acadicus, where now I can take that patient that's been created by nursing, I can put that patient into a home environment. Same patient, same sequencer, same everything. I can take a couple of things off if I need to take a couple of things off, switch a couple of things out if I need to. But then put that patient into now a home environment and have them be an opiate reaction in the home environment and give it to EMS students to use as well. So those were the two newest developments. And then we had our respiratory sequencers. Now this is not nursing, so maybe it's a little different than what we should be covering this month, but it's respiratory therapy. So our respiratory therapy program also developed 3 scenarios, utilizing the sequencer format, and it's asthma, CHF, and COPD. And so those are transferable over to nursing too. Like, you could be using those in the nursing environment as well. I can use them in the EMS environment, or build them in the nursing environment. So those sequencers that have come out of Madison College, they work great, and they're good for everyone. So that was sort of what we had in mind when we were doing some of that custom content. Is we want that to be, used across all of our different agencies. We want respiratory to use it, we want nursing to use it, we want EMS to be able to use it. So yeah, that's the new nursing stuff that came from Madison College.
That is awesome. Very, very cool. And those sequencers, so, before we had the sequencers, the instructor would be using the simulation manager to change all the variables, throughout the entire scenario. So like we get to stage 2, there's a different blood pressure, there's a different temperature, there's a different heart rate. And the facilitator would be changing those things and then hitting set values, and then the student sees that reaction. And similarly, patient characteristics. So the patient is suddenly having a hard time breathing. That's a button in the simulation manager that the facilitator would click on along with those values that are changing. So the sequencer, the idea there is to make it easier for the nursing educator or for the educator in general to be able to just advance the simulation through a series of preset states where everything is already set. So you don't have to go in there and change every individual value. However, it still gives the instructor an opportunity to facilitate the scenario live. So, a lot of different simulations will go kind of, or other platforms will go all the way in the direction of that automation and have everything just kind of, pre-programmed, and there's only one way to go through it. This still allows for the student to kind of go off the rails and to do something a little different, or for the instructor to say, okay, well, like you had told a story last time about the difference between atropine and adenosine, is it? One of the two,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
um, and let the student just kind of make mistakes and let that play out a little bit. And then you can
Yeah.
use that as a teaching opportunity. So that's what the excuse me, that's what the sequencers are all about.
Yeah, it's so funny. I tell that story so much now that I actually start apologizing to people. I'm like, I'm really sorry. If you've watched Simulation Pulse live, you're going to hear that story again. But that's like the perfect example of what I did. Now, when I started out, I was like, I was, just like I felt like I had to almost turn into an octopus, and just like I got to hit this, I got to hit this, I got to hit this, because that's sort of the way that my brain works. Is like I want to be, tweaking things here and there. Um, so so yeah, so I had a lot of fun. I did. I had a lot of fun like moving the slider and then this here and then put this here and put that there. And but it's much easier. It certainly, as our program has scaled up and more we're doing simulation, it certainly has made my life a lot easier to go, okay, next in the sequence. And those vital signs are set, the patient reaction is set, everything is set the way that it's supposed to look, so that all I have to do is just keep hitting next until it's done. But what's so important, and I can't stress this enough because I had an instructor ask me about it. The instructor said, well, is it just set to that? Like I can't change it? Like, no, you can change it. Right. So yeah, you're using the sequencer, but if the student does something like my student did with that adenosine atropine mistake, if a student does something like that, you can still change it. You're okay. You can still make the decision to go, no, okay, that's wrong. This is what that's going to do. And I like that because the nursing faculty will sit right next to me when I'm doing when I'm facilitating, and they'll say to me like, hey, drop the blood pressure a little bit. That's just let's see how they react. Let's see what they do. Are they gonna notice it? Are they gonna do something about it immediately? They haven't taken a blood pressure in a while. Let's change the blood pressure. And then that way, when they take the blood pressure, they're like, oh, we should have taken the blood pressure. So the instructor can still be the instructor.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it sort of introduces a level of standardization. So it's always going to be the same sort of states. It's just, but you have the best of both worlds. You have the ability to go and free range a little bit, but you also have that standardization. So it's always going to be the same number of states, which is because initially I remember when we were talking about it, we wanted to give the maximum amount of control to the instructor. We thought that's what everybody wanted. It was just like maximal control. But then we realized pretty quickly that a lot of schools or a lot of instructors, they don't necessarily know what happens. To be honest with you, it's like we don't want to say it out loud, but like unfortunately, a lot of the instructors really don't know what happens when someone does the wrong thing, And you want to be able to provide a tool that any instructor can run under any circumstances and not have the risk of there being that sort of moment where they're like, I'm not really actually sure what would happen if you did that. There's the kind of the standardization that way. So any instructor can just pick it up and run it. There's nothing to learn in terms of like how do you change it or what if they do this, what if they do that. It's pretty straightforward in terms of those stages.
And it helps so much too, because I am the kind of instructor where I'm going to tinker. I'm going to say, "Ooh, that might change this a little bit," or I'm that kind of person. But you're right, John. Not everybody's like that. Not everybody's ready to change it on the fly. Or we have a lot of part-time faculty that'll come in and maybe they're new, and we really needed them to facilitate this simulation. And so there they are with the sim mannequin. They know how to run the sim mannequin, and they're facilitating this simulation. And you're right. They're not necessarily going, okay, if that person gives this, then this, and then this, and then that, and then oh, well, this patient has myasthenia gravis, so I better be thinking about that. Like, we're not always in that headspace. And especially then as an instructor, if I'm trying to watch my student, my focus is very much on what is my student doing. I want to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, what their reasoning is, those kind of things, and how those are going, because in debrief, I'm going to have to talk through that. And I want to be prepared for that. I don't want to go into debrief and go, I didn't see that. I missed that. I didn't see that happen. I want to be able to go, this happened, that happened. And I'm usually taking notes and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a lot easier to kind of just go through that sequence. Do you want me to share my, oh, you're doing it. Perfect.
Yeah, great minds think alike.
I'm telling you, I'm over here doing the same thing that you're doing. I'm bringing it up on the screen.
No,
I'm bringing it up on my screen to the right, and John beat me by seconds. It's right here.
and I loaded this patient. This is not an actual scene. This is something I mocked up just to demonstrate possibilities. But I can open up my simulation manager here. And what I want to really make the point of how easy this is for nursing educators to use this, right? You literally click on your menu in the bottom. You're not in a headset. A lot of the people that we demonstrate to, they feel like, well, all of my instructors have to learn how to use VR and they all have to learn how to teleport around. And there's this concern that, onboarding faculty is going to be a challenge. But what I want to make sure that we reinforce here is that this is, for the instructor, we've made this super easy. So assuming you have somebody that's helping you set up a computer and Acadicus is installed and everything is ready to go, you launch it, you go into your scenario. Now is when the facilitator comes in, the instructor comes in. All they have to do is open up the menu and click on this patient. And in this case, it's the sequencer. And we can see on here, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so we can see some of the values. But we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. All of this is also provided in the scenario plan that OpenRN provides. So we actually have a comprehensive scenario plan that we could show a little bit later, but it'll go through a deeper explanation into what's going on here. But there's facilitator notes here. So we're looking for, different things that we're looking for in terms of student interventions, and they can go through. And there's several different, like Bill mentioned earlier, there's asthma, CHF, and COPD. So all of those 3 scenarios can begin and you can run those with this patient. But that's really all the instructor would have to do is just watch. The student would be in a headset. So you'd see their avatar in here working with the patient, and you're watching for these different interventions. You're kind of going through the facilitation that way, and then advancing just by clicking in each one of these states. So there's really nothing much more to it than that in terms of facilitation. And then it's really back to the basics, back to the fundamentals of simulation, where now you get to have that debriefing moment where you get to talk to the student about the decisions that they made and if they made any mistakes or areas that they could improve, and you're able to have that debriefing afterwards. So
Yeah, and what I had done originally when I was doing this with respiratory, I wanted the patient to start off at a certain area. So what happens is the way it sort of works at Madison College is the instructor will give me a scenario. They'll say, here's the scenario I want to run. And then I'll find the patient that works best. I'll work with them. Obviously, I work in terms of like instructional design. I'll work with them on the best patient to use. Most of the time, it's going to be the Gen 2 patients. And so then I'll say, okay, give me the list. Here's what you want, right? You want this patient to start this way, and then if the students do this, you want them to go there. If they don't do the, give me that whole sort of list of things, and I'll work through them with them on those. And that's how we created the sequencer. I was working with Patty Montgomery, and I was saying, okay, what exactly should happen? What are the things that you want to happen in what order? And she kind of laid out, here's what we do. And it was already built in their scenario that they were using with their mannequins. So it was already there. She didn't have to like rebuild and do a whole new scenario. She just brought that scenario over, gave it to me. I went in with the Gen 2 patient and I said, okay, she wants the blood pressure to start at 134/76 for this patient. And then, so I set that all up. So then what I did was I just copied the scene so that I had 3 of them. So I set one up as asthma, one up as CHF, and one up as congestive heart failure. So I had 3 scenes. So I could just switch between those scenes. Well, this now cuts down on even me having to do that. Like I don't even have to switch between the scenes now. Now I can just switch between the sequences. And I can just say, okay, this group, there's usually we have like 9 students that will go. And so we divide them up as 3 and 3. So, or 3, 3, and 3. So we have, 3 students that are in working on the asthma patient, and then 3 will do CHF, and then 3 will do COPD. And so, so now when the patient or the students that have gone through the asthma portion of the scenario, they go, well, we're done. They come out, the next group gets ready to go. Instead of having to like reload a whole new scene or anything like that, all I have to do is reset the sequencer. I just reset it and I go back to the beginning, and then I choose which one I want out of that. So next one I want congestive heart failure. So I go down, I choose congestive heart failure, I hit begin sequence, and we're off and running, right? And that's changed lung sounds, it changes his heart tone, like everything that would be in that sequence, or everything that would be affecting that patient. And then you can see too, like if they do the correct treatment, this is what we should see. If they don't do the correct treatment, this is what we should see. And so we can change that. That's within that sequence. If they do correct, this is where we go. If it's not correct, this is where we go. And we did that too with the opiate reaction. And let me see if I can find it. We did that too with the opiate reaction as well, where it, same general idea that, and I'll share my screen here. Let me do that. So share, so that y'all can see what I'm seeing. Actually, I'm just going to share Acadicus. That would be better because I have a bunch of windows in front of it. So let me pull those windows out of the way too. So yeah, so here is the opiate reaction. Now this is still under some development. I'm putting some stuff in, so I'm going to have some visuals in there for them as well. So that's why you're seeing like you can see the visual that's already in here as well, patient report. And then I have an actual report that's coming from the nursing faculty. So nursing faculty they give me the report that they want in there, and I just put it in there. Now that I'm probably going to scale down a little smaller, stick it on the wall, or I can scale it down so that it's paper size so that they could pick it up and read it. So it can be either one of those. But so here's the opiate reaction, and right, so I'm going to put that sequencer on. I can hit begin sequence, and then you can see, let me make that a little bigger as well. Oops, I grabbed the endotracheal tube. Don't want to do that. Just move it there, and then there, make it a little bigger. Just want to move it, make it a little bigger. There you go. So now I can just change those sequences here, right? So there's your post-surgery. This is the way the patient comes back. This is the way they're looking, right? And you'll see that with her. She's sort of drowsy, okay? And then she's having more pain. When she has more pain, we're going to give her some morphine, right? Do we give her morphine or do we not give her morphine? So you can see how the stage changes between stage 2A, stage 2B, right? She's given morphine, and then she starts to become breathing more labored, right? She starts to become drowsy again. And then the decision is made that we need to give her naloxone because her respiratory rate drops so low. So we give her some naloxone and that changes. This again is very useful with my EMS students because now I can take the same patient. I'll minimize this. I can take the same patient, bring this patient now into a home environment, okay? Bring this patient now into a home environment and and have the exact same situation, but now for the EMS student. So this is post-surgery, whereas for our EMS students, it would be, like I mentioned before, someone who has either harmed themselves or someone who, perhaps they took, I'll create the scenario right now. This is a patient who was taking what they thought was regular heroin, but it got laced with fentanyl. I mean, that's happening right now in the United States. This is a very, very common issue. And so we have to be prepared for that. So I can't wait 6, 8, 10 months for somebody to create a new scenario for me. I have to create a new scenario based on what's currently happening in the world right now. So that's what I mean, that's what's been great about that sequencer is that we can now pull that out for anyone. So
Yeah, that is absolutely awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll also share here the OpenRN link in case anybody wants to see the scenario, the root scenario, I should say. I'm going to share this. I'm noticing it says that it only shares it with hosts and panelists. So if there's a way to share it with everybody, um,
I don't know.
but anyway, that everybody is a panelist at this point, I suppose.
I can.
Oh, we've got Kate Jansen here as well. Hi, Kate.
Oh, hi,
I haven't
Kate.
talked to Kate in a while. Um, but either, yeah,
So I changed it. I changed it. Who can see your messages? I changed it to an everyone. So hopefully that will happen. If not, well, I can copy this message here. Let me see.
there you go. Yeah, copy that over. Just wanted to share that this is the list of all the OpenRN scenarios once my meeting controls get out of the way there. And then the opioid scenario is down here by scenario number 22. So we can see more about the patient, more about the learning objectives. And then there's a link here. If we click that, that's going to open up our scenario plan. So we can learn more specifically about what's going on with Phoebe James. She's a 58-year-old female with a recent history of left total knee. So we can go through the whole learning objectives, all the deal here, the states, more explanation in terms of a little more detail about what the states involve, what the expected student behaviors are. And these have been developed and vetted by expert nursing educators. I believe this one was authored at Madison College, right, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that
Yes.
and then vetted and tested and so there's a lot of detail here. This is an amazing scenario and a tremendous resource to be completely open education. So even if you're not using Acadicus, if you just want to use this with traditional mannequin-based simulation, you can use this scenario, you can customize it, you can modify it. They really appreciate if you take the survey afterwards. My
Yeah, and
card.
that's how a lot of these started was just they were mannequin based. These were mannequin, some of these were mannequin based scenarios that were, someone came up with the idea, was using it with a mannequin, and then we, enhanced it to make it even, a little bigger, obviously more detailed, and then brought into virtual reality. So
Absolutely. And if you go to the nursing page that I shared earlier, one of the ways you can get to this is just within the simulations, we have the OpenRN scenarios here. So you can click that and then open that up and all the different scenario plans are listed here as well. So there's multiple ways to get to it. But I also wanted to share a screenshot. Hang on one second. Bear with me. New share, because when Bill was mentioning about when they run this at their XR center, um, I wanted to share, this is an image of their XR center. So, when Bill was describing, 3 by 3 students are going into the scenario. So they're going off into these booths and they're having the simulation experience here. And then afterwards, what I think is really cool about their design here is this debriefing area. So what you don't see is there's chairs behind where the camera is positioned, but they've got nice comfy chairs up in front, a bunch of other chairs, and they can actually pull up Acadicus on this screen and see what happened in those other scenarios for debriefing here on the big screen. And I'll let you take it from there, Bill, in terms of describing how that's done. But I just think that's
It's
great.
my
You're teaching
office.
a student. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
This has become, it really has become my office. And I love it. We do right now, we currently have about 3 to 5 classes a week that are happening in the XR Center. Now we serve 19 programs throughout the college. So we obviously, nursing is one of our programs, but we also serve a bunch of other programs, ones that are medical, ones that are non-medical, it could be respiratory therapy, EMS. We also have architecture, HVAC. The automotive is coming to us. That's going to start relatively soon. They're looking at some paint simulation, but so what happens is my students will go in, so there'll be one in each of we have 9 total on this side. What you're not seeing the other 3 that are over there to the left. And then we have 2 more that are over to the far right of this picture. So all total, we have 11 bays, and then the front one makes 12. And then my teaching station or my control station would also make 13. We can also kind of go down the middle if we had to. But what we do then is the student will be in the simulation. We'll put 3 in the simulation or 4, whatever, however many we're doing that day in the simulation. And then I'll just go into Acadicus in non-VR mode. I'll go in viewer mode on the big screens up there. There's a computer that's associated with those big screens. And I'll just take that, put it in non-VR mode, and then stick it in ghost mode so that it's not in the way. It doesn't feel like it's even in the scenario. And then the instructor can sit right there in the comfortable chairs and watch the simulation, hear everything that's going on, listen in, see what's happening. They can obviously get up and make suggestions if they feel like there's something they need to do for the student. And then I usually sit at my control station, which is to the far bottom right of this picture. And I sit there and I run the simulation. And the instructor can always just come right over to me and say, hey, lower the blood pressure or whatever it may be. And then I also take it on the road with laptops with headsets. So I do the same thing with our Reedsburg campus and our Watertown campus because we want to make sure that our students out there are getting the same experience that our students at Truax are getting.
That's incredible. That is absolutely incredible. And I feel like everywhere I go, everybody's always asking. They know obviously interested in virtual reality development and running a company, so they're always like, "Have you seen what Madison College is doing with VR?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard a thing or two about it." Because I feel like it's been on every major news station. It's been all over the newspapers. It's gotten so much publicity. It's just really put Madison College on the map. And we talk to schools all over the country, and I would say that that's probably one of, if not the most active VR centers that I'm aware of. It's extremely active in terms of a lot of people are starting to build VR labs are becoming, I think there's going to be a VR lab in every school in the next, 3, 4, 5 years. But right now, even the ones that have VR labs are still sort of learning how to operationalize it, right? Like in terms of, they're piloting things, they're testing things, but Madison College is way out in front, like running it. Like how many programs did you say?
19.
19 programs
19.
are using XR in some capacity or starting to learn it, or that's pretty ambitious. I think it'd be tough to find another school that has quite that level of reach in terms of the number of programs, the number of simulations you're running, the quality of the VR hardware and the PCs that you're providing. These aren't just standalone headsets with mobile graphics. These are high powered PC VR stations, and really giving these students a great experience.
Yeah, and we are happy to give advice too. So, if you need some advice, I'm always happy to talk to people. I've talked to plenty of people. Obviously I've talked to a lot of people in the Acadicus family because, I want to help with that success as much as possible. Because my start was in Acadicus. I mean, I'm not I wasn't playing with virtual reality like when I was a kid, like I didn't have any virtual reality stuff. I always tell the story like, I shot the aliens out of the air in the mall in 1995, and then that video is still around somewhere. Somebody put that in. That was in the Acadicus video, wasn't it? Yeah. I talk about that. And then they put that actual video in there. I'm like, that's so cool, man. That's almost 30 years ago now. Starting off, there was a lot of advice that was given to me initially by Jon and by the Acadicus team. And I scaffolded on top of that. It's built on that rock. So like, we went from the Jon, you helped out enormously with the original, design for the XR Center and how we could maximize that. I'm in there doing the day-to-day work, but I've got Carly Brady behind me, I've got Jeffrey Krentz behind me, I've got the entire Acadicus team behind me. So there's a lot of work that goes on in there, but without all of those other things. We just had Spanish class in there yesterday. It was a lot of fun. We were checking out 360 videos. We were using the Oculus for that, but we were checking out 360 videos. It was a lot of fun. Um, so yeah, so I love it. It's my office now.
That's
I'm
so
there
cool. A
all the
dream
time.
job. That's a
It
dream job.
is. It is.
Well, another cool thing about what you're doing is like you're not just, a lot of schools come and they're just like trying to pick out which application are we going to choose in order to start our VR our VR implementation. And that's like saying, you're going to build a VR lab a simulation lab with mannequins and you're only going to buy from one manufacturer. Like no, realistically, by the time you build if you're going to build an XR center, you really want to leverage lots of different applications, and of course, their budget is always a constraint. But when you see the efficacy, when you see the difference, when you see how excited the students get, and what a powerful learning experience this is, it has a gravitational pull. You might start your VR lab around one application, but then eventually you're going to want to expand it, and that's another I think advantage of starting with a PC VR base, because you can always, add mobile. You do both. You've got some experiences that are mobile, some that are PC VR. You've got the whole gamut, so that when a program comes to you, like automotive, you can like go through the Rolodex of all the applications for both standalone and PC VR
Yeah.
and say, here's an application we think is going to match really well
Yeah.
with your objectives. Let's give it a try.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. And
Yeah.
so you're using lots of different applications, not just one. I think that's another sort of insight that a lot of schools they kind of overlook that. They're like, what we need to pick one, but you really
Yeah.
don't. You can do lots of
No,
different
you
things.
don't. And like, for example, automotive would be our 20th. I'm going to celebrate that. I'm going to do, some sort of like happy 20th here. But they'd be our 20th program. The program that they're looking at is so the manufacturer sells the program along with the equipment. So it's kind of standalone by itself, but it's PC based and it requires, because it's so complicated in what it does, like it's got a sprayer and everything. It's all about painting, cars and stuff like that. And I talked to the instructor, he's like, thousands of gallons of paint that we lose every year, because there's overspray and we want students to learn, but at the same time, can we save some money this way? And so, yeah, so what they have is like it requires PC VR. It requires the type of PCs we have. Like when I talked to the manufacturer, they were like, I don't know if you're going to have this PC. And we talked about it and they're like, okay, yeah, you have that PC, we're good. But then it uses satellite stations and it uses higher quality, even than we use on a daily basis at the XR Center. So, what saved us and what will save us so much money if we're thinking about getting this is we already have the PCs. We have the PCs. We have the Valve Index. Like we have the things that we need to run this. So really, I'm going to the manufacturer and saying, "Oh, well, we already do PC-based VR. We're not just talking about standalone stuff." And he goes, "Oh, okay." And then we talk about like, let's talk about getting the program. That's what I really need is I need the program so I can just now add that program in and we're off and running.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's going to be so many different sort of parallel tracks that VR, emerges on. Standalone headsets are great because eventually students can have them in their backpacks. They're mobile, they can go everywhere. So there's this mobility aspect of it that's really important. But there's still that value of coming to an XR center where you're getting the best of the best experience. And, in a world where a lot of the students that you're sort of like recruiting or hoping will, come to a Madison College, they've probably tried or have a Meta Quest, and they're familiar with mobile VR, but they come there and they see the PCs. The day that I was there, I'll never forget the opening day. People came in that were already, students came in that were already familiar with VR, but they were like, whoa, you've got PC VR. It was like this really sought after, like, oh, this is the real deal. This is a high quality stuff,
Right.
and that, so you've got that depth, like nobody builds a VR lab or, or a VR arcade to go and play with a standalone headset. You go to an arcade because they've got the best of the best equipment. And I think there'll probably always be that parallel track for the future of VR. There will be a place for the really ultra high definition, high realism, high fidelity simulation. And then there'll be the parallel track of mobile, standalone, lower quality, but it's in your backpack and you can take it home with you.
Yeah, and there's definitely benefits to both. There's no doubt. Now, one of the things that's really great, like when I'm using the metas now, so there's a lot of stuff about HP Reverb G2s are off the market. Then there's Windows Mixed Reality is going to be out. So that has concerned me a little bit because we rely a lot on our Reverb G2s. But I basically went, okay, wait a minute. If I take my Meta headset and I plug it in and then I plug it into the computer, I'm done.
Yep.
Like, so there's no panic on my part because I have my computer there. I can use the MetaQuest on its standalone. It's fine. It's great for that. We teach Spanish that way. And then I can take and just plug in a 15-foot USB-C cable, plug it into the computer, and we're off and running again. So it doesn't become it really it concerned me some because I do like the Reverb G2s that we use, but it didn't concern me a lot. And I was ready for that switch and having the PC based VR just ready to go because that's the high quality stuff we're doing. And then like architecture uses Chief Architect PC based. Or sorry, they use Chief Architect, they use Revit, they use Enscape, all PC based. That's not something that I can do on my Quest headset. So if the way I look at it is if I'm going to be doing this for education, then PC based VR is the way to go for the moment until maybe some of the wireless stuff catches up. But I got to be honest with some of the stuff they're doing on Revit, Enscape, SolidWorks. Like these are big, beefy programs. These are not programs that you're going to, stick on a MetaQuest and run. At least not yet. Maybe, a few years in the future, but you're definitely not doing it at the moment. And you can you can wirelessly Quest link and stuff like that. We haven't gone as much into that just because I'm running 12 stations, so it's a little harder to do. But yeah, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I get dry throat really easily.
Yep, same here, same here. No, that's pretty incredible. And I think the thing that I think is when I imagine, what's happening at Madison College, and it's like you've taken one classroom. And I remember when we went on a tour of Madison College and they were sort of looking for spaces to put this thing, and where do we want the XR Center to be? Not even realizing whether it was going to work or not. Maybe this is just a test. Maybe no one wants it, not realizing how popular it would be necessarily. I think we all knew, but like I think it had to be demonstrated, So and then finding this classroom, and it's like right in the middle of the Truax campus hub. It's like this beautiful building, and then right in the heart of it is this new XR center. And it's like there's all these spaces when you walk through Madison College, they have all the state-of-the-art equipment in terms of machine shops and art programs and 3D printers and everything. And then you get into this XR center. And I think if I was a student considering going to school there, and you look in that window and you see people that are doing that, it's pretty cool. It's got a coolness factor to it, but then it also has the efficacy factor of it. There is a growing body of evidence around the efficacy of VR learning. And in
Yeah.
some cases they're saying, students are learning up to 4 times faster, and they're remembering 4 times longer what they're learning. And of course, there's a lot of studies being done. Speaking of ambitious
Believe it.
higher ed implementations, I should get a kickback for all the times I spend promoting Rob Theriot's evidence base. But I have to pull this up. I know I'm like a broken record, but I love this document. This is something Robert Theriot from Georgian College keeps up. It's a evidence search for XR. And you just look through, I mean, you can stop on any one of these articles and read about it and see how incredible VR is across the board, all different kinds of applications, all kinds of different implementations, all different industries. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that students who are learning in these virtual environments it's like hyper accelerating the rate at which they're learning. And so I think it's like I think you're making history, right? I think all the programs that are starting out with VR programs, even though most of them are in their infancy, I think you're just starting on something that's going to be commonplace very, very quickly because of that evidence.
Yeah, and it's also everything is about student engagement. Everything. All of the discussions that we have, how do we engage students more? How do we engage students more? I think I'd say almost every professional development thing that I sit in, almost every one of them, I hear something about student engagement. How do we increase student engagement? Well, to increase student engagement, we're going to have to be better than this thing, okay? Because this is probably one of the most powerful tools that's ever come out in the history of man. And I don't say that lightly. I think this is an extremely powerful tool. It can also be very dangerous in that it will keep your attention for a very, very long period of time. But in order to be a little bit more interesting than that phone, how do we do it? How do we engage our students? And that one of the ways to do that is virtual reality, because we're putting them now into an environment that they're seeing, they're feeling, they're getting a much better understanding of how these things work. And they get to do the things that they would. What I like about it is that they get that practice before the real. And that's what we're doing in simulation, right? That's what we're doing in nursing simulation. That's what we're doing in EMS simulation. That's what we're doing in any type of simulation, is you're practicing before you then go out and do the real thing. That's it. And it's constant practice, and it's constantly going over all of these concepts. It's taking the concepts that you're learning in your theory courses and now bringing them into practice. Virtual reality is no different than that. It is no different. All I'm doing is taking, and we did this yesterday. The instructor, and I'm sorry, I know this is nursing month, but I'm going to talk about the Spanish instructor that was in here yesterday, Philippe, because he was so excited when he first saw what he could do in VR that he just kept coming back, all these ideas. So he just had his students in a 360 video, and you think, okay, so what? They watched it. It was like 2.5 minutes long. They were in a 360 video. So what? They were in a market in Madrid in this 360 video that was available on YouTube. So it's not even something he had to make or produce or anything like that. 360 video that was available on YouTube. They were in a market, and he is speaking to them in Spanish. I don't know Spanish, so I was kind of just watching. But he was speaking to them in Spanish, and he was asking them questions about the things that they see in this market. And they're in this market in Madrid, like I said, or no, it was in Valencia. It was in Valencia. And they're standing in the middle of this market, and he's asking, are the people older or the people younger? I did understand that. And then he was asking about what foods they saw and what, and it immersed them in that culture just in a 2.5 minute 360 video. That they'll remember. They'll absolutely remember that. We didn't get a chance to do Google Earth. That was the other thing that we were going to do, but to actually have the students, pick a place in Spain or pick a place in a South American country that you want to go to and you want to check out, and then just just hit something and go, and then talk about what you see. That's really impactful, and that's an experience that you may not get without virtual reality. So.
Yeah, that's a great way to spend, an hour or two if you go into Google Earth on any VR device and just zoom in. because
Yep,
then it opens up street view, right? Like you get into a
sure
360
does.
anywhere you want. So you just take the whole earth and you just zoom, zoom, zoom down into some little alley, a little street somewhere in some little village of wherever in the world. And then
Yep.
boom, you're standing there looking around. It
And
just,
you pick up this orb that's over here and you put it up to your face. And when you do that, you're now in full street view. You're
full
standing
street
in the
view.
middle of the street. It's so cool. My
Yeah.
son wanted to, he was doing a project on Egypt and he asked, this was when he was maybe 10, and he asked her, or maybe younger. Anyway, he said, can we go to Egypt and see the Great Pyramids? And I'm like, no. I don't we have money, time, maybe, okay, maybe someday, but definitely not now. And so I said, well, wait a minute, wait. I've got VR, I've got PC, here's my PC and here's my headset. I was using an Alienware and a Rift at that time. And I said, well, yeah, here, wait, hold on, put this on. And I brought him to Google Earth. And then I put him right down in front of the Great Pyramids, like standing right in front of the Great Pyramids. And he's like, whoa. And his report was so much more, like he was so much more into doing the report. Anybody that's ever had a 10-year-old boy, you know how hard it is to get him to do homework. Okay. I'm a 48-year-old boy. I still have trouble doing homework. So, but now oh yeah, I can do. So we know the engagement. We absolutely know the engagement. And it's the same thing with our nursing program. It's the same thing. You get them in there, you get them working on a patient, you get them in a fully immersive environment. They feel like they're actually there. They're now removed from the simulation room. Because how sometimes it's hard in the simulation rooms to remove them from the simulation room to make them feel like they're somewhere else. They still know they're in the sim room. But we also know, and I think actually it's in that research, is that within about 30 seconds of going into virtual reality, it suspends that idea that I'm just standing in a VR lab. That's gone. And now you're there.
Yep, absolutely. It's very transformative, and my favorite testament to that is when people try to put the controllers down on virtual tables that don't exist, it's like they're gone. They're totally,
Yep.
totally immersed in that environment. Or like when you brought the Oregon EMS people to the office, and just watching them go in. I had watched students do, lots of these simulations, and they're always kind of put on the headset and they've never seen anything, so they're kind of frozen up and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do. But the professionals got in there and they were instantly on their hands and knees, going up to the airway, working bag valve mask, starting EKGs. They're just immediately going at it. And, they forgot they were in an office. They were just in there taking care of that kid that was, in that scenario. So that it really, you lose yourself. You forget that you're not actually there. Almost to the point where I think there's an element of this as it gets more and more realistic, where we're going to have to start being careful about how
Yeah.
we go about administering these experiences because they are so real. And we
Yeah.
started to touch on that with the multiple casualty scenario, where we very early on realized that we have to be very careful about, how and when we go about demonstrating or even showing that scene, because it can be very triggering. And with good reason. So,
Yeah.
there's a point at which we can go too far. And we've actually explored several simulations where the concern was that we could go too far. If you're trying to prepare for a multiple casualty incident and you actually produce the actual feeling of being in an incident like that, the virtual experience can actually be quite traumatic. So I think there's a time that we're reaching a tipping point where the realism is going to get so real that we're going to have some ethical considerations about just how real do we really want these things to be, and to sort of like simulate, have a dial, like how because sometimes you want to go that far. You want to desensitize yourself to that feeling so that when you're in there in real life, you don't have that same elevated heart rate, and you can kind of like try to at least manage it better. So
Yeah, I mean, the evidence of that just happened today, John, just now in this simulation pulse. Okay. When I was talking about the opiate, the opiate reaction, that, and the reason that I mentioned friends that I've had is because it came back to me.
yeah.
When I start to think about that opiate reaction, that's a nursing opiate reaction. It's not necessarily what has happened to, my friends in the past. But that it does it every time. It does it every time. And the first time I went in the opiate reaction, it does, and even after that it does. Now, obviously for some people it's going to be a lot more triggering. For some people it's going to affect them a lot more. It depends on the person, but that's the ethical conversation that we absolutely have to have. I agree completely. And figuring out, you know, how we can leverage that for its power, but also how we can leverage, we can be careful about the amount of power that we expend on it. I agree completely.
Absolutely. You know, and the closer simulation gets to real life, you know, it's like that's kind of what we're doing is there's a real life scenario and we're sort of trying as best we can to sort of emulate and sort of like, you know, create a virtual representation of it. But it's getting closer and closer and closer to real until it gets so real that it's almost there, you know, and that where I imagine like in hospitals at some point in the future, they'll be able to, you know, simulate an event that's about to happen in real life where it is as urgent as it's going to be. And everybody that's involved with the resuscitation or the scenario has to go into that headset and just get ready. And then you go and work with the real patient. So lots of possibilities. I realize we're at the top of the hour here, so we should wrap it up. But another Simulation Pulse Live in the books.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks for
I'm
joining,
gonna
Martin.
stop the recording here.
Thanks for
so that
joining, Kate.
we're-
Have a great weekend.
Take care.